The governing party, the African National Congress, this afternoon hosting a dialogue which it said seeks to add to the party's voice on the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. It comes amid serious warnings from trade experts and political economists. They believe that South Africa's stance of non-alignment may compromise trade relations, particularly with the US and the West, but the ANC says it will not change its stance of non-alignment. Well, could this dialogue reveal any changes to the ANC's position on the war? Ziniko Mhlaba is at Ruth First House, where the party is hosting the dialogue. Ziniko, good afternoon to you. What discussions are underway there?
A very good afternoon, Stephen. Well, the proceedings are about to start now as we are engaging with you, but I can tell you that many people from across different spheres of government, but also across sectors, will be here, and some of them actually already arrived. And I'm talking about people coming from diplomatic corps, but also academics, researchers, and just normal allies of the ANC, whether from China, from Russia, but also understand that the invite was also sent out to the Ukraine embassy, but it was still to be confirmed whether the ambassador will be able to attend this particular dialogue. Well, with me, Stephen, I'm joined by the head of South Africa's DECO department, Mr. Clayson Monyela, who's going to talk to us about the importance of this gathering. Mr. Monyela, thank you very much for your time. How important is this gathering, especially from the diplomatic perspective?
Well, this is an important dialogue because the matter of the conflict or the war between Russia and Ukraine remains topical. As you know, President Ramaphosa has just returned from visiting the two countries as part of the Africa Peace Mission that involved other 6 countries, South Africa leading that particular mission. So today's dialogue is very important, particularly for the South African society to perhaps get a deeper understanding behind South Africa's active non-aligned position. What do we mean by that? As you can see, people that are invited here, it's from various sectors of society. The diplomatic community is here, the ruling party, and I think they've extended the invitation to other interested parties, including academia, and more importantly, foreign policy correspondents and analysts and commentators. So these are people who need to understand the rationale behind South Africa's position on this important issue and why we've adopted the position that we've adopted as government.
Mr. Monyela, as DECO, as government, especially from the diplomatic perspective, there have been voices from opposition parties here in South Africa, from analysts, whether from the economic perspective, but also just political economists who are worried about this stance in regards to our position, saying it might compromise our trade relations, and also the different voices that are being expressed. Political parties such as the ruling party, ANC, DA, has also been expressing. How difficult or how important has it been to make sure that you manage the voice of this country, but also taking into considering all these factors that are being expressed by various people?
This is why this dialogue is important, because South Africa's active non-aligned position is very simple. We take the position that on a matter like this, it's important for the global south, in particular for developing countries, not to be caught up in proxy wars between big powers, but to maintain the independence of their foreign policy. In fact, if you consider that this Africa Peace Mission was received by both Ukraine and Russia, you could trace that reception. The fact that those two countries were willing to engage with the 7 heads of state is because these countries largely, including South Africa, have taken this non-aligned position. If they had taken a side, it would have been difficult for the one country to receive them. So this position, we believe, in the final analysis, will be vindicated. You're hearing voices now, even from parts of Europe, who are saying the only way out of this war is through dialogue, is through diplomacy, is through negotiations. We are calling for a cessation of hostility so that you can then allow negotiations. This has been South Africa's position from the start. So those who don't understand or don't agree with it would have to tell us, in the context of the war, of any war, the most powerful call you can make is for peace.
Mr. Monyela, the issue now of having these engagements, how open is government, how open is South Africa to changing its position or consolidating it, to considering the different views? So are we saying we're having this conversation to listen to more voices that might give South Africa more new ideas in any way? So are you saying South Africa is taking a decision that cannot be changed, or these engagements can actually convince government to reconsider to some extent?
Change it to what?
Change it to different perspectives that are being proposed by opposition parties and other analysts. So are you telling us, my question is the position of South Africa stable and set on what it is today and can never be changed in any way, even through this debate?
If you were to ask any of the people who are criticizing South Africa's non-aligned position, active non-aligned position, and ask them for an alternative, I'm sure they'll give you this much: zero. Because this is the best position you can take on a conflict of this nature. As I've said to you, we are active. We're not just non-aligned, we are active. This is, by the way, a very historic intervention by Africa, where you had 7 heads of state going on a peace mission on a conflict that is outside the African continent. It's never happened before. And South Africa is leading those efforts because we remain steadfast that every conflict can only or can best be resolved through dialogue, through diplomacy, through negotiations. We as a country have a history of this. And by the way, resolving a conflict or building peace is not an event. So the one peace mission visit that just occurred now will not provide all the answers or end a conflict of this. It's a process. But the important thing is that we have started, and South Africa is leading those efforts. We are actively part of efforts to try and find a solution to this conflict, to this war. And that gives meaning to the active non-aligned position that
one last question, Mr. Monyela. Outside what we're talking about here, there's been an issue with the Lesotho and illegal miners coming to South Africa, and Minister Mantashe to some extent saying Lesotho is actually economically sabotaging the country. What's your view as head of DECO's diplomacy in such utterances, and how is our relationship right now with Lesotho?
Well, the relations with Lesotho are solid and cordial and friendly and historical. In fact, I'm sure the water that you drank today or that you showered with probably comes from the Lesotho Highlands Water Project, the second phase of which President Ramaphosa and the Prime Minister of Lesotho just recently opened officially. So the relations between the two countries are solid and cordial, no problem there. The point that Minister Mantashe was making around illegal mining is an important one that needs to be attended to. Any illegal activity in any country cannot be allowed. I'm sure you will agree with that. This is why law enforcement agencies exist, to enforce the law and deal with any criminality, including this one. So this, I'm sure, is a matter that is receiving attention from our law enforcement agencies. But this cannot and does not compromise the relations between the two countries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Monyela, for your time, sir. DECO's head of diplomacy, Mr. Tracy Monyela, they're giving us a sense of the importance of this party Chula Dialogue 7, but also at the very last point, they're just alluding DECO's position or South Africa's position on our relations with Lesotho. That's in regards to the statement made by the Energy Minister and Mineral Resources, Mr. Mantashe, in which he said Lesotho might or allegedly sabotaging South Africa economically.